Hey everybody, I'm Sierra,
And I'm Ben.
and welcome back to another episode of The Unsolved Couple, where every week Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime.
Unsolved mysteries.
Babe, here we go.
Here we go.
Episode
Which one?
17.
Is it 17?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Season 1, episode 17 of Unsolved Mysteries.
Yep.
We're going to recap it for you guys. That's why you're all here. That's why you've shown up.
That is why. That is the description we give of our show.
Yep, that's what we promised to do. And today's episode is a little different.
Oh, it's a rough
It
one.
threw Unsolved Mysteries, did us a little dirty, threw us a little bit of a curveball. And it was an emotional roller coaster because at first it was a 90-minute episode.
Yeah, they tell you that right off the bat.
Yeah,
And that is rough.
it is rough. So we were a little concerned when we first
But-
saw that.
Let's be clear, though. So we're watching this without, obviously, it's not on television at night.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was thinking about this this morning, actually. You would sit down and you'd watch an episode of something in the evening, and it was an hour.
Yeah.
And then you remember what happened in the, I would maybe say the late 90s, early 2000s. Remember you could start buying seasons of shows you enjoyed
Like on DVD.
on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the world then figured out?
That there's actually such little content in a show.
Well, you realized how much commercials you were watching
Yeah.
in an hour.
Uh-huh.
I remember whatever show, I can't remember what show, but you put it in, it was the hour-long show, and you look, and it's actually only 40 or 41 minutes, and you realize, are you telling me I'm watching 19 minutes of commercials? And this is the same. Robert Stack tells us that we have an hour and a half special.
Yeah, this is a special, episode that they...
Well, that's how they describe it. It's not special for anybody watching it. That's not the word I would use to describe this episode. It ain't special. But it was, in reality, it was only, 58 minutes, 59 minutes? It is a solid hour long.
Yeah.
But that means 30 minutes of commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
I know.
And clearly we're at a society now that doesn't deal with commercials.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember for the first time us staying in hotels with children that,
Oh, yeah.
we turned on. Because in the morning, if you're obviously your family, you're at a hotel, we get the kids all set and ready. Everyone's got their breakfast. And then we would turn on Nick Jr. or Disney Jr., whatever the availability was, so that we had, at that point, 20-something minutes to, get ourselves ready.
Yeah.
And the children, I mean, they had to have been, later toddlers, early, little kids,
Yeah.
being so confused as to what these commercials were.
Yeah, I mean, our kids didn't see commercials because we didn't really go on vacation the first several years. Of
Yeah. Anyone who has
them
young
being
kids
alive.
is you don't leave your house. Yeah.
But at that point, I mean, they had been watching.
They
Yes.
thought that someone had changed the channel on them.
Since we've had children, we've never had live television
No,
in our house. So, we got rid of it right as they were 6 months old and that. So the only thing they'd ever watched was
Streaming services.
Netflix, whatever. There was only a couple at that time.
Yeah.
I think it was just Netflix and I don't know, maybe Hulu. I don't know.
No,
don't even
I think at the
that.
time it was just Netflix. You could buy full shows because I bought a few Nickelodeon shows.
Yeah, we did buy a lot of shows.
I think Amazon allowed you to be able to buy
A lot
shows
of Yo
and
Gabba
YouTube.
Gabba.
Yeah, Yo Gabba Gabba.
And Dora the Explorer.
Yeah, and so, but I remember the kids getting mad and getting after each other that someone had sat on the remote or Mom, the TV's not working, and having to explain to the children that it's
a commercial.
and we have no control over that. Yeah.
When I saw this. He says hour and a half. It's 90 minutes. I mean, it was 58 minutes, but that was the longest 58 minutes of my life.
Well, so that's why I was saying this was an emotional roller coaster, because at first the emotions of, holy crud, we have 90 minutes to try to recap.
No, we don't.
We don't. And then the very next thing that dawned on us, so Ben and I actually watched this while we were up visiting family for Thanksgiving, or started watching it to try to kind of get...
We only watched like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then I started skipping forward, and we realized that it's about one mystery.
That's it.
Yeah.
Alcatraz.
Alcatraz Island and the infamous escape. They did a 90-minute
special,
broadcast style special. It was not live.
Oh no, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we're going to get into it, but the emotional roller coaster that Ben and I experienced in about 4 minutes trying to get a head start on this while we were out of town was wait, what? And then we had this long thought process back and forth. Do we combine this with another episode? Do we skip this altogether? Because if this is something you are interested in, there are so many podcasts and different things about Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we came to the conclusion this is coming out. You guys will have all hopefully everyone had a safe and joyous and merry holiday season. This is in what we call the dead zone between Christmas Eve and New Year's Day, where nobody knows what day of the week it is. We have all consumed an insane amount of calories based in cheese and sugar. And you're in a time warp, right?
Sure.
So, Ben, you don't feel like that?
Yeah, that week between it feels like...
It just seems to last forever. Nothing... You don't know what's going on left, right, or center.
Yeah. It's an interesting
Yeah,
week.
so this will be coming out this week. So I was like, do we just skip it and go to something? It was this is our last episode, I believe, of the year. This is...
So do we need to tell people Happy New Year's because this is New Year's Eve?
Oh, is this coming out New Year's Eve?
What's Tuesday?
Tuesday.
New Year's Eve is Tuesday?
Yes. Hey, Happy New Year's Eve. Everybody make smart choices. Don't drink and drive and be safe.
Well, maybe they'll hear this and they will help them with some of their New Year's resolutions because they'll hear about how these guys swam and they'll think, I need to get in shape so I can swim.
Or how they ended up in prison in the first place, so I need to make better choices.
I don't know.
So, yeah, that's what this is. This is motivation for you all to help with your New Year's resolutions of 2025.
All right.
Okay. Real quick, off the top. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has continued to listen and download. This last week, I got an email from our server just kind of recapping our whole year, technically, the whole of 2024. And we have done leaps and bounds better than Ben and I expected when we kind of first started this. And we can push content out there and I can make social media posts and do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, all of our gratitude goes back to this wouldn't go anywhere if people weren't downloading, following us, and doing all of the things, sharing us with someone that that enjoys true crime. So we really, really appreciate it. And that'll be a little plug to join our social medias. Instagram, Unsolved Couple Pod. We have a Facebook discussion group where every week I post a Let's Talk About It post. And so you can get on there and engage with people on some of the silly things that we talk about and throw out your thoughts and theories. And that's Unsolved Couple Podcast. And that's on Facebook. So follow us. And make sure at this time, if you are a fan of our show, to please rate and review. That goes a long way for these little tiny indie podcasts. It costs nothing. And then one step further is there's 3 little dots on the top of all of our things where you can just have an automatic download where it just automatically follows and downloads right into your feed. It's super easy. The more people that do that, the more Amazon and Spotify and Apple Podcast will actually recommend us to other listeners who have the same sort of general content. Okay.
All right.
There you go. That's my marketing ploy to you guys.
All
Okay.
right.
So, yeah, up top, guys, we've got one story to tell you. This was told like no other episode had been done before. We get a random like news anchor. Everyone's got headpieces on. They're going back and forth to each other.
It was an interesting
one. So we're going to do our best to recap this episode for you guys. And it is all about Alcatraz.
They even had like a new little beginning.
Yeah.
Alcatraz.
I know, like the sound of the slamming metal gates. Bar doors.
Doors.
Yeah.
Getting locked up in Alcatraz.
Have you been to Alcatraz Island?
No.
I've always wanted to go.
I want to go.
Yeah. I've been to San Francisco multiple times, and I've been to the Golden Gate Park that is full of museums, and it's really, really cool. But to try to do all of that and get out to Alcatraz Island in one day is impossible. So
I've never been to San Francisco.
You have never been? Okay. So I've been several times, and we always took a ferry. So we had a family. My grandmother lived in Calistoga, and so you could drive down the coastline, park, and take a ferry into San Francisco. So I've been right by Alcatraz Island on a ferry before, but I've never taken the tour.
You never took the swim over.
No, and I definitely would not swim in that. I don't like being cold.
That's shocking.
Yeah, so cold and wet and windy, that doesn't sound fun.
So you don't like to be uncomfortable.
No.
That's what you're
I
saying.
don't understand.
Right. I'm so shocked by
I don't understand these cold plungers. I don't understand these endurance swimmers in cold water, but hey, whatever jingles your jangle, I'm not.
Jingles your jangle?
Yeah, I'm not here to.
What does that even mean?
I just made it up.
That's shocking.
Yeah, whatever.
It's past
whatever
Christmas.
gets your tinsel in a twist. I'm not going to shame anybody if they like to be in the cold water.
All right.
Okay, so in 1775, a Spanish explorer named Juan Manuel de... Oh, this is where it gets tricky.
Oh, here we go. Sierra's naming names.
Yeah. Okay, Spanish. What does a Y sound make?
Why are you looking at me?
You do speak Spanish a little bit.
Okay, very clearly. No, I don't.
Ayala, but in Spanish.
Ayala?
Mm-hmm.
Ayala?
Ayala.
I don't know. I'm throwing
Juan
a guess.
Manuel de Ayala.
Maybe.
Mapped out and named the
probably
rugged Alcatraz Island. Okay.
He named it Alcatraz, huh? All right.
He christened it La Isla de los Alcatraz. You guys, my Spanish is terrible.
I just find it funny. We're trying to say things that we don't know anything about it.
Or the Island of Pelicans, due to the large population of seabirds.
Of pelicans on there?
Of pelicans on there. So I thought that was a fun little history fact for you. 75 years later, the island would be put to use in the 1850s when President Millard Fillmore, full disclosure, didn't even know there was anyone, I didn't know that there was a President Fillmore, signed an order reserving the island for military use during 1850s. A fortress was constructed on Alcatraz and about 100 cannons were installed around the island to protect San Francisco Bay. Also, during this time, Alcatraz became home to the West Coast first operating lighthouse. Are you looking up President Fillmore?
Yeah.
What president was he?
The 13th president.
Okay. So, I know nothing about that man.
I actually don't know a lot about him either. So, there you go.
There you go. By the 1850s, the U.S. Army had begun holding military prisoners at Alcatraz. The key reason was it's isolated from the mainland by cold, strong waters of the San Francisco Bay.
Shark-infested waters.
Well, that's not true, but they claimed it was shark-infested as well. The island was deemed an ideal location for a prison due to those things, which if you told me that something was shark infested, that's all I need to know to stay on this island. I'm never getting off of it.
Sierra would be like, okay,
Okay.
I'm good.
I'll figure this out. Thank you.
And Sierra, well, you can stay here and die, or you can try to get to freedom and die. It's like, I'll just do it. That's it.
I'm good here.
I'm good here.
The dark, I have the deepest seated fears of like
Sharks.
lurking below dark water creatures. And the entire time, if I was swimming, I'd be hyperventilating, waiting for something to come up.
I heard the Meg is out there.
If anything even so much as brushed against my foot.
This is a true statement. I've been in the ocean water with Sierra, and anytime anything touches her, she yells.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Jumps around in the water. She never makes it past your thighs,
no,
I would say.
I don't.
Yeah.
Nope.
Anyways, we're probably going to get sidetracked
I know.
quite a bit in this one.
Okay. So during the early 20th centuries, inmates labored and constructed a brand new cell house. It was about 600 cells on Alcatraz, along with a hospital, a mess hall, and a few other prison buildings. According to the National Park Services, when this new complex finished in 1912, it was the world's largest reinforced concrete building. This thing's legit. Okay?
But it wasn't used as a prison.
It had been started being used as a military prison and a lighthouse. So there was prisoners being held on there, but it was not a federal prison at that point.
It wasn't a full functioning prison yet.
In 1933, the Army relinquished Alcatraz to the U.S. Justice Department, which wanted to turn that into a federal prison that could specifically hold criminal populations that were too difficult or too dangerous to be handled by other U.S. penitentiaries. This is, I think, one of the things that gives this place such notoriety. No one was like arrested and sent to Alcatraz.
No.
You had to be like
a problem
to be commissioned to be there. So this was like the last attempt to try to get these people. So you took all the most dangerous criminals and put them in one spot.
Yeah.
And then we're surprised that things went wrong several times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Following construction to make this complex at Alcatraz more secure, the maximum security facility officially opened July 1st, 1934. The first warden, James A. Johnson, hired approximately 1 guard for every 3 prisoners. And the big key difference being every prisoner had their own individual cell. Among those who did time at the, quote, Rock was the nickname given, is a notorious prohibition gangster, Scarface Capone. Al Capone, who spent 4.5 years there during the 1930s. So once again, Capone was arrested on tax evasion, right? That's kind of the famous thing is like they couldn't get him on anything else.
On all the other crimes.
But if he had just paid his taxes, he might not have ever gotten caught, right?
I can't remember. Don't quote me, but I think he had claimed practically 0 earnings, but yet he was. Yeah, we all knew he's running around in nice cars and whatever.
So he was actually sent to Alcatraz because he had been held in Georgia, which allowed him to remain in contact with his criminal operations in Chicago. He had a carpeted cell.
Yes,
he was like getting the cush
he was paying
treatment.
Everybody.
Yeah, he had like custom suits made for him. He had all the luxuries. He was on a vacation being there. And they sent him to Alcatraz. And I will say, I watched several interviews, and I think they talk about it in the Unsolved Mysteries episode. That was one thing. He did not get any special treatment.
Well, I mean...
At Alcatraz, as far as that goes, it seems like the guards there did not care who you were. You did not get beneficial treatment.
And I'll say this about this episode. They actually interview former guards on Alcatraz.
That was the one part of this episode that I actually thought was very interesting.
And one of the guys said the other inmates hated the guy. They didn't care for him. because of who he was. And
Yeah.
you got to think too. You're now in California. This guy is an East Coast.
He's an East Coast mobster. You are on the West Coast now.
It's just different cultures, And what I'm saying is, no one in California, and not that most of the inmates, they're not from California. They're from all over the United States.
Yeah.
But you have all these people from different walks of life. They had nothing to do with Al Capone or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah,
they hated him.
He just didn't seem to care who he was.
Yeah.
And so he didn't get a lot of beneficial treatment.
He didn't get along with a lot of them.
Okay, so a few other ones. It seemed like the time that this prison was holding people was the rise and fall of like gangster, mafia sort of behavior.
Not mafia. Mafia hasn't showed up yet. That's just,
The mafia hasn't shown up yet. Okay.
well, I guess you could. No,
These were organized criminal gangs.
No, I guess the mafia did start like back in the 30s.
Well, what was Al Capone? Wasn't he like a mobster?
Mobster,
Yeah.
gangster. But he didn't run like a mafia family. I mean, he had guys that he worked with.
Is there a difference between the mob and the mafia?
So, the mob and the mafia? I don't know. Guess not.
Yeah.
I guess you could. I don't know. Like I said, when I did.
You read that book, didn't you?
Yeah, but that was about New York, the families.
Yeah.
And so I stand myself corrected. Like I'm already correcting myself. That I want to say one of the biggest gangsters, or I guess mob bosses. He started in the 30s, and I want to say it was Luciano, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Well, if anyone knows out there the difference between mafia and mob, please let us know.
But
I mean, I guess mob to me, I just think location-wise. I think Chicago, Las Vegas.
But Al Capone, he was like
Mafia, I think of like New York, New Jersey, right?
Al Capone, he robbed banks.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, this was a lot of this stemmed from Prohibition.
The mafia, well, and that's where a lot of
bootleg, all of that kind of organized crime
started the mafia, and that. Anyways, let's not get into that.
Okay, so some of the other famous ones was George Machine Gun Kelly, who spent 17 years there on kidnapping. He kidnapped an oil tycoon.
He a guitarist, and he's married to that lady,
Megan Fox.
Yeah, isn't that?
Actually, they are divorced, or she.
Oh, that's so.
So here's some celebrity news for you. She got knocked up. They're married.
No, you know what? Don't care.
They found out over Thanksgiving. She found out that this might be shocking to you. He was texting and seemed to be having an illicit affair with another woman.
Interesting.
So she left him.
So how did he serve time in Alcatraz, and then he's?
Yeah, he kind of ripped this name
nowadays.
off, right? Didn't he? So Machine Gun Kelly, George, spent 17 years there. He kidnapped an oil tycoon.
Okay.
And held him for a ransom. And actually, like, turned the guy back over. Ransom was paid. And then, actually, his wife behind was one of the, the main leader behind this whole thing. And, there's video of her sitting in the courthouse. She is beautiful and looking like she does not care. And there's a lot of stories out there that she might have actually been the main person in charge, but he took the fall. She ended up serving life in prison as well for the same thing.
Are you saying there's a true crime story here to be told?
Yeah,
about this
that's for another day, and it's not unsolved, so we do know that.
Okay.
And then gangster Alvin Creepy Carpez, who was listed as public enemy number 1 in the 1930s. He spent over 25 years behind bars at Alcatraz. And then one of the other infamous one is the Robert Stroud, who was known as the Birdman of Alcatraz.
But he never had birds in Alcatraz.
Yeah, so I did a deep dive on that. He was at Leavenworth, which is another really famous prison.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he was granted the right to have 2 birds, and then he started breeding them. He ended up with tons of birds. He wrote 2 books, but then the birds were also his downfall because he was sending hidden messages and contraband in and out on bird food and bird cages.
And so they found out and they
shipped him to Alcatraz, where they did not
Alcatraz.
let him take his birds with him. And some of the stories from the guards there, he was off his rocker,
Yeah.
like nude all the time, off in La La Land. And Al Capone, who was suffering from syphilis, who had affected his brain by then, was also in and out of like fits of madness. So there was some
crazy people.
We got
all
some
over the
crazy
place.
people being locked up in these teeny tiny little cells. And I think that's where like there's a lot of spooky stories around this and so on and so forth. But what we're actually going to get to is over the years there was 14 known attempts to escape from Alcatraz involving 36 inmates. The Federal Bureau of Prisons reports that out of these would-be 23 were captured, 6 were shot and killed during their attempt getaways, 2 drowned, and 5, which we're only going to hear about 3 of them, went missing and are presumed drowned. I could not find information on the other 2.
They told us.
Oh, they did. Okay.
In the episode.
The 5.
The other 2.
Okay.
They tell us it was 2 guys. They sawed the bars off the kitchen.
Oh.
And then they paddled themselves with a 5-gallon bucket. They were holding onto a 5-gallon bucket. And they're just presumed. It was in December.
That's cold.
They were presumed that they drowned and died.
Okay.
But technically, because they never found their bodies,
yeah,
they're considered
But they're not as
missing.
infamous as the 3 we're going to be talking about today. So the federal penitentiary was shut down in 1963 because operating expenses were far too high than those of other facilities at the time. The prison's island location meant all food and supplies had to be shipped in, which cost a lot.
And your workers.
And your workers have to be shipped in. Furthermore, the isolated island buildings were beginning to crumble due to the salty sea air. They were literally like eroding quicker than they could fix it. During the 3 decades of operation, there ended up being just about 1,500 men who served time on the island. Today, it is part of the Golden Gate National Recreational Area and is open to the public with about 1 million people that visit a year. So that's kind of your
your history of Alcatraz.
That's my history of Alcatraz for you. And that follows the show, the first part of this Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Robert Stack gives us the history.
He gives us the history and talks about some of the famous people. And then he rolls into the story that we're going to talk about today, which is the 3 inmates who escaped.
Wow.
There's a movie actually based on that. What's his name? That old old man. Eastwood. This was one of his.
In the late 60s.
Yeah.
He did Escape from Alcatraz, a movie.
Yeah. Have you seen that movie?
No.
No, I have not. I'm not a big Clint Eastwood fan.
I'm sorry. Excuse me?
I mean, I don't watch like a movie just because he's in it. I don't know much about him.
Okay. I'm sorry, everyone. Sorry you had to hear that.
I think it's like if you are a guy's guy, Clint Eastwood is a big pivotal character in your like childhood and like formative years of falling in love with. Didn't he do westerns?
Yeah.
And shoot 'em up movies?
Okay. Well, we're gonna skip over this.
Okay. You're gonna just let me just step out of the hole I'm digging for myself?
Just stop.
Okay. All right. So.
All right.
What do you got for us, babe?
I got our escape. This is what was a big deal. I will say, Alcatraz has interested me. So if you guys are interested in the history of Alcatraz and some of the stuff, there is a podcast. I've quoted it before. It's called Infamous America. And season, I think, because they categorize it by seasons, I think season 5 and then season 20, they do like a 3 or 4 episode part on Alcatraz.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. Because there's some history behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, everyone has heard about it, at least here. Anyways, we're talking about this escape. This escape, our players, 3 people supposedly attempted the escape, but there was 5 people involved. Clarence Carnes, was supposedly kind of some of the helping hand and the mastermind behind it. Alan West. And then we got the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. Two people named Clarence. Clearly that was a popular name.
Oh, yeah, Clarence.
Yeah, that was my grandpa's
Clarence.
name. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, Ben grew up his whole life with hearing his grandmother yell,
Clarence! Clarence! And my grandpa was this quiet, just
soft-spoken man.
very soft-spoken, good man, wonderful man. All right, and Frank Morris is our last player. The three people that made the escape are the Anglin brothers and Frank Morris. Okay. Anyways, sorry. All right. So this attempt was made on June 11th, 1962. Carnes worked in the library, and that's kind of how they suspect that he helped kind of facilitate all of this. And what are you doing?
Just keep going. I'm just getting content.
Sierra is distracting me. All right. Alan West, he was friends with Carnes, and that's kind of how Alan and Carnes, he got them in touch with all these guys. Anyways, they're all friends. You're all inmates together. Whatever. Oh, and I was trying to look up what they all were in there for. Carnes was in for, I actually couldn't find what he originally went into Alcatraz for. I think murder, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
All three of these men had attempted other escapes, hadn't they?
Yes,
I thought that's what landed them in Alcatraz, was they had caused problems by multiple escape attempts.
Yeah, they all ended up there because they attempted. But Carnes, after he got there in 1946, I guess there was a big uprising. There was there was one attempt, and 2 guards were killed, 3 inmates were killed, and supposedly Carnes was part of the mastermind of that. They don't tell us how, and I tried to read. It just says that he was a part of it. And for that attempt, he was then he was sentenced again to life in prison. So he's supposedly supposed to spend the rest of his life in Alcatraz. And the rest of them were pretty much all sent there for robbery, bank robberies. The Anglin brothers had robbed a bank.
Yeah, the Anglin brothers, I did a little bit of reading about them. Their mom even was like, my boys, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. She was like trying to get she seemed to bury her head in the sand is what I'm saying. Like, she was far more than just a supportive parent. Like, oh, this is really rough. My boys made some poor choices and now they've ended up in prison. It seemed like she really was what we'd call an enabler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, they tried to escape. Everyone had made some type of escape attempts. And, I think Alan West was the one. He'd stole $16 and he got 25 years.
$16. Was it? Yeah, but it was because he had stolen it from a building that housed a post office.
Yeah, it was Alan West or Frank
Morris. It was like
Morris.
A federal crime, and far, far more than.
It is crazy.
That is crazy. And that I could get, and I will. My soapbox is that we punish to this day crimes like that far more than like the police officer in New York City who just was convicted for sexual exploitation of a child who got 5 years in prison. But this guy steals $16 from a building.
But it was different times back
then. I understand it was different times, but to this day, white-collar crimes typically have crazy sentences. But that's my soapbox of we need to do better for another day, and that's another torch to pick up on in another episode.
Yeah, I mean...
That's just my rant. And here's the thing. I don't think you're going to meet many people that disagree that we don't prosecute that heavily enough, but...
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, so... This is how the plot starts. Alan West is working at the prison, and he gets to paint the ceiling and the top of the cell blocks.
Yeah.
He gets this job to paint it. When he's up there, he sees this shaft going to the ceiling. And this, I get this whole, but there's bars crossing it.
In multiple directions.
Yeah. So you can't climb up through it. And he says, you can't cut them. It's too difficult. But he realizes that he can cut around the pipe, the metal
the fitting that's in there.
Yeah.
And pull the whole thing
and
out.
just push the whole thing out. I guess they say not Alan West. Frank Morris is the really smart guy. He's got the IQ of like 133.
Have you ever taken an IQ test before?
No, I have not. I knew this was going to come up. You know why I've never taken an IQ test?
Why? You don't want to know?
I don't want to know. Because I'm pretty certain I would be close to...
You think you're going to be on the bottom level?
I think I'm going to be on the bottom level. I'm going to be really dumb. And I just don't want to know that about myself. Because at the end of the day...
What are you going to do about it?
What am I going to do? I got the brain that God gave me. And if he gave me this brain where I'm really dumb, and there are things in my life I've realized as I've had conversations like, oh, I'm really dumb. I am not the brightest person to walk the face of this earth. And so I don't want to know.
You don't need a number attached to that.
I don't need a number attached. Because then I have to own that number.
Yeah.
You know, at least I can just own that I'm dumb.
Blissfully unaware of what your IQ is.
But exactly.
Okay.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay. See, I don't even know. Do you know what your number is?
Yes.
Do you want to own it?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you 134?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm 121.
Wow. See, so you're
But
almost
this is
a genius.
my frustration.
Okay.
I also have ADHD and dyslexia and test anxiety.
Okay.
So I have always known that I am very good at problem solving. I am very intelligent when it comes to most things. But you try to give me a math test and I probably am equivalent to elementary age. And I think too, technology has made my brain super lazy when it comes to math and things like that. So I can have the IQ that I do, but to actually get that on paper in a college educated setting is really, really hard. And so it's caused frustration in the fact that if I decide to go back to school or different things like that, there are some obstacles that are in the way that the traditional way we educate in society does not showcase my intelligence. So it's a weird catch-22 that, yeah, I have a great high IQ, but I can't take a math test to save my life. So what are you going to do?
I don't think that's the only thing there. You gotta
I just think that's the thing I stress the most about. Anyways, but yeah, we can go back to that. Yes, I had never asked you if you'd taken an IQ test before.
One time I went to look at it to take one.
And you're like,
I think I started one or two questions and I realized I don't want to know this.
Fair.
And so I just clicked out. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, from here on out, I just try to hide that I'm dumb to people. And then it's okay.
Okay.
Anyways.
I don't think you're dumb, but yes, continue.
Well, the only smart thing I did in my life was I married my wife.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Anyways, enough of that. Okay, so Alan West, I told you, he gets to paint the top of this thing. He realizes, hey, he tells
This
Clarence
guy's got nothing but
Carnes,
time on his hands, and he starts to formulate. He sees a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, and he starts to put together this plan.
He brings in Clarence Carnes, who then also brings in the Anglin brothers, who then they bring in Frank Morris. Because Frank Morris, supposedly a genius like you. Okay? So they start coming up with this plan. And they say this starts back in October of 1961. Is when they start planning this. Okay?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons supposedly that this was successful is that this was not a immediately impulse reaction.
Yeah. And it wasn't quick.
Yeah.
So the first obstacle they have is they've got to figure out how to get to the top of the cell block. The cells, right? They're on the bottom floor.
Yep.
And they need to find a way to get to the top. Well, during Clarence Carnes' escape in the 40s, where he, I guess, made it, he found this utility corridor that runs behind the cells. And in this corridor, there's all these pipes. And you can use those pipes to climb to the top.
Shimmy your way right up to the top.
You just have to find a way into the corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So they dug holes in the back of their cells with spoons and utensils.
Yeah.
Dug these holes. Then they made these makeshift, what looks like vents to put over the holes. So it looked like it was just a vent.
Yep.
How the guards didn't know, I don't know. And if they see a vent, what's the first thing they're going to try to do?
Why is that vent there?
Yeah. Anyways, so they dug holes into the back so they can shimmy up to the top and cut this thing out and get out. But they don't do that right away.
No.
Well, they now need to make a raft.
Well, and you forgot too, the guy that was working up on the top floor. Are we going to get to that? Yeah.
So they have to make this raft. That's their next obstacle. Is how are we going to get out of our cell? Well, they figured out that way. And how are they going to get out of the building? They figured out the vent in the ceiling. But how are they going to get out of Alcatraz? They need a raft. But they need his place to work. So Alan, in the reenactment they show, he starts kicking paint chips off.
All the asbestos is going over the edge.
Starts kicking it off the ceiling while he's working. And the guard's like, what's going on out there?
Just making a big mess.
Making a mess. So the guards allow Alan to hang blankets up on the top of the cell block. So for 8 months, first off, how long is this taking to paint this thing? You're telling me all you had to do was paint the ceiling and this?
I don't know.
I don't know. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And then who authorized to hang blankets so you have a private work area? So for 8 months, this thing is blanketed off. And every night, they are climbing out of their cells and shimmying up and working on their raft. Well, so they have to make sure, because they tell us there's like 19 counts every day. They're constantly counting these guys. So they make out of like concrete powder
and not dish soap, bars of soap.
Bars of soap. They make masks of their head. And one of the Anglin brothers works in the barber shop. So he starts collecting hair, and this is
so gross to me, but yeah.
But
I get it.
So they would make a head that they would stick out of there, and it looked real. Stick out of their blankets, put it on their pillow, shimmy up, and they'd work all night on their raft and all the other stuff, the cutting, all the other stuff they needed to do to escape. And did this for months on end. So the guards would come by and do their count, but the lights were dimmed, and they would just kind of flash a light. They'd see a head with hair in there and just go on their merry way. And so they started collecting raincoats. And they had a bunch of raincoats.
Well, and this is when it's interesting because there was multiple prisoners who helped them gather raincoats, but weren't interested in the escape plan, but were like totally fine, being like, yeah, sure, here.
Yeah. So they were able to collect raincoats from all these prisoners. They took them up to that top and made a raft. They don't tell us exactly how they made the raft.
No,
But they made a raft. And so then on the night of June 11th, 1962, they decide it's time to go. So, and let me be clear, the Anglin brothers and Frank Morris were the ones going up to the top. And
yes.
Clarence Carnes, even though he helped kind of facilitate, give ideas, he didn't want any part in the
Because
escape.
he had already got in trouble for something. He said that, and he had worked in the library and had gotten in trouble for passing contraband or notes or something.
He thought there was too much
He
heat
thought
on him.
there was too many eyes on him to be physically in and out of his cell doing things
Well,
like
they
that.
said they would do shakedowns all the time, and he was targeted constantly for shakedowns because he worked in the library and that. So I would assume he was afraid they would find the hole in the back of his cell, and it would blow the whole thing.
Yeah, so while he masterminded a lot of this and helped engineer things, he did not ever shimmy up to the top.
Yeah. And Alan West, he was the one at the top painting. He dug a hole in his cell to get out, but he never went in the evenings to go do this.
Yeah.
And that's important.
And that'll become his fatal flaw here in a little while.
So on June 11th, when they decide it's time to go, this is the day they go. Anglin brothers get out. They climb to the top. Frank Morris does the same. He goes. But Alan West, he goes to climb out of his hole. He didn't make it big enough.
He didn't fit. He never checked to see if his hole. So the guy that actually originally comes up with this idea
sees the way out.
Also manipulates the situation where they get the blankets up and provides the space.
Yeah.
Cannot fit through his hole to get out.
So they say,
peace out on him.
They say, tough luck, guy.
We're not waiting. We're not pushing this off another few more weeks. We are leaving now.
We're leaving you behind. So they shimmy up to the roof. They cut that thing out. They shimmy up to the roof. They shimmy down the wall. And they say, because they'd focused all of their energy on the security in the building, there was very little outside.
Yeah, that once they got outside, there was not a lot holding them back.
And you're on an island.
Yeah, where are you going to go?
So they shimmy down, get to the water. Now they got to blow up their raft. And the one thing that these guys had in prison, all of them, is
they had a music hour.
They said in the evenings they had a music hour. And they say it was during that music hour that these guys dug their holes because there was so much noise. So a lot of guys were allowed, what's the word?
Instruments.
Instruments. Thank you. And one of them had a little accordion.
Yeah.
A little hand one. And they took the keys out so it didn't make any noise. And they could just use it as a pump.
Yeah, that's pretty smart engineering.
I
always find it interesting when your mind, these guys are all serving life sentences or, close to. They have nothing to lose. They have nothing but time on their hands.
Yeah. So they use this accordion, they pump the raft, and off they go into the night.
Yep.
Never to be seen.
Never seen again. Yeah, and that is the mystery because how long they had quite a bit of a head start.
So this was in the evening. Clearly we don't know the exact time frame of when they left.
Yeah.
But they're not discovered to be missing till the morning head count.
6:30 head count, I think, right?
Yeah. And they said at that time the water was 54 degrees at that time.
Burr.
Yeah. Cold. All right. So now they're missing. A manhunt ensues. They start looking. Nothing. So here are the things that we did find. They found an oar the day after, a handmade oar that they believed was one of the oars.
Yeah, because they found like a matching one in one of their cells, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what they said. 2 days later, they found, they called it a rat pack. It was this little package bundled up in a piece of rubber. And in it was an address book, a money order, and family photos of one of the guys.
Yeah.
So that got
Important
lost.
documentation of some sort. Yeah.
June 15th. So, 3 days later, they found a raincoat floating. And then on June 22nd, they found pieces of the raft 50 yards from the Alcatraz shore.
Yeah.
That's all they found of these guys.
Yep.
Never found a body. Never found anything else.
Yeah.
There was a report, supposedly, by a Norwegian ship the day after that said they were out at sea from San Francisco. They said they saw a body.
Yeah, they called in a body. They couldn't get to it. Yeah, they couldn't get to it.
It was a big shipping ship.
Yeah, I did love the little Norwegian hats they had on the actors. Did you see it? It was like the iconic, like, poofy, or like the beret hat with like the big poofy ball on the top. I was like, hey, find me a Norwegian hat and the background actors for put on.
Yeah. So that's the only, and they said that the way they described the body, the clothes, that it was Frank Morris, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's pretty much all factually. And I would even say that report, that's technically not factually. Yeah, I mean, it's just one more.
Didn't fish the body out.
They didn't, yeah.
So you don't know. But you don't even know that it was a body. It could have been.
It could have been a lot of other things. Yeah.
But facts-wise, those are the only things they ever found from that escape.
There is one report of an attorney getting a phone call.
So now we're into speculation.
Yeah.
The day after, an attorney, I wrote her name down, Eugenia McGowan. Mm-hmm. She was a lawyer, or she's someone that worked in an office.
A law office in town.
Supposedly helped people on Alcatraz. Said that she got a phone call the day after. Said that they wanted to have her help facilitate a meeting with the U.S. Marshals. And she goes, why? I don't want to tell you. She goes, well, I'm not going to do that.
I'm not wasting my time. Yeah.
And he claimed to be John Anglin.
Yeah, and at the time, the news hadn't broken yet.
It had, because he told her, turn the news on or read a newspaper.
But I mean, it hadn't reached her yet. Yeah.
And that's the only supposed contact.
Yeah.
Supposedly the FBI set up a tap at that law office.
Whoever called her never called back.
Never called back. So now we have people, we get interviewed. We get the interviews of people. They actually even interviewed the FBI agent that headed the investigation. And we get this one guy. Let me look at his name.
The professor?
Yeah, dude. That guy. Golly, that guy. Don DeNevy?
Don DeNevy? Professor D.D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that guy?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, listen. We're going to get sidetracked here. This guy is bald. There's a cue ball on top. There's no shame in that. Mm-hmm. But he's got the typical...
He's got serial killer glasses on.
No, that's 80s glasses. All right, I'll give you the 80s glasses. Okay. But he has just the ring of hair that runs along the side of the head.
The side of the head, yeah.
But on the top. And that hair is just wild out there.
You want like a Berkeley, California professor? This was it.
Just shave it, buddy. Just shave it, man. Go full bald. Just commit. Just accept it.
Embrace it.
It ain't coming back. But he is convinced these guys got away. Supposedly he befriends this Clarence Carnes. Mm-hmm. I guess they wrote a manuscript, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Not a book, a manuscript together. And so he talked a lot with Clarence Carnes.
Yeah, he's kind of there as the opportunist argument that these guys got away. And then you've got the FBI guy who's kind of giving us the viewpoint that they likely didn't make it. So you're kind of getting both of their counterpoints back and forth to each other of why they believe what they believe.
But this professor guy, he's got no evidence. The only evidence he has is the word of a killer.
Yeah.
That's it. Clarence claims that a few months later he got a postcard from these guys
With a code word on it or
fishing.
something. Yeah, the gone fishing code word.
Just mean they made it.
Yeah.
And the professor's convinced too. I will say the FBI guy he said, listen, take whatever you want with what Clarence Carnes says. It's okay to look at it, but you really got to listen to what this guy says and take it with a grain of salt. That guy.
Fair. He's a convicted murderer, and yeah.
Well, he said that guy tried to feed us a lot of stuff. He goes, I'll listen, I'll look at it, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Whatever that guy says. And I said, that's fair.
Yeah.
But Professor Guy.
So, and then this
convinced.
is where the unsolved episode takes because here's the thing, they didn't just talk about this, because this is technically an unsolved mystery, right? But then at this point, we get Robert and a female news anchor style lady.
Okay, so
Okay.
Before we get to that, there was one other theory. Clarence Carnes supposedly says that another inmate who had gotten released, his name was Bumpy Johnson,
Yes.
supposedly was waiting for them in the bay with
had chartered a boat of some sort, and he was going to pick them up. Yep.
We have no evidence of that.
Yeah.
But from a word from a murderer.
Yeah.
So
those are the three theories.
Or
the three sort of that they escaped, that they drowned, or that they had help getting away.
All we know is these guys left on a raft, never to be seen again. And to this day, there is no evidence that they've shown up in the real world.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Now go to
so
Unsolved
then
Mysteries
Unsolved
did.
Mysteries decides to basically reenact the raft thing.
I don't know.
So they said there was
turned
two
real
magazines
weird
that they
quick.
found in the library that talked about flotation devices and survival of something. One was a Sports Illustrated, and one was
Popular Mechanics.
Popular Mechanics, talking about engineering and different things like that, flotation devices. They believed, again, we don't have any evidence that this is the case, but that's how they got the idea to engineer what their flotation devices. Based on those specs from those magazines, and we don't get any information on what materials they used or anything. They reconstructed a raft.
Yeah.
And they get 3 men known for being very good at kayaking.
Uh-huh.
And they put them on a raft on the bay of Alcatraz. They also get a man who is a cold water long range swimmer.
Yeah.
They mic him up, make sure he's all good to go. And they're going to send these men out into the bay and see if they can make it to shore.
They're going to try to see if it was possible for these guys to survive.
Yes. Different time of year and a different time of the day. But they said the water temperatures were relatively about the same.
Well, you got to think, San Francisco's weather,
It's pretty it fluctuates a little bit in the summer and winter, but it's still just kind of always cold and windy there.
But it's not north weather.
No, it's not like
the
bay freezes over in the winter, and in the summertime, it's still cold. It's still cold water in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Robert is like up on the prison somewhere. This lady's she's on a boat at one point. They're like coming to you live from da da da. Like they've got microphones. They're going back and forth with each other.
Earpiece
on. All right, are we ready? Wanda, can you, I don't know what her name was. I can't remember, but like, all right, we're just about a minute out from launch here. I was like, what are we
What
watching?
is going on? You think this is a live broadcast?
It's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah. And then they proceed for the next like 40 minutes of the show.
Now there's only, it was only 20 minutes left of it.
But they check in with these people along the way like we are watching some Olympic event.
Yeah. It was awesome.
It was so weird.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad. The best was Robert Stack standing there, and they come back to him. With me now is this marine biologist, and he then proceeds to tell us that the guards have been telling the inmates that the bay is shark infested.
Oh yeah, we get a history on the sharks. Yeah.
Man-eating sharks.
Specifically, yes. Man-eating sharks.
He says, one of the things the guards used to tell the inmates, blah, 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 that. He turns to this guy and he goes, is that true? And the guy goes, no, there's no man-eating sharks in the bay.
Maybe on the other side of the bridge.
He said, they're out in the ocean.
Yeah.
He says, has there ever been any attacks in the bay? No. He goes, and he literally then says, okay, thank you. And that's it. That guy's entire contribution is over.
Yeah.
They brought this one guy just to tell us that there's not man-eating sharks in the bay.
And that there's never been
already knew.
an attack documented on people.
I was like, man, that poor guy. Just 2 questions. Dunzo. You're out.
So
Get out.
ultimately, we go back and forth between the rafters and the swimmer. We talk about hypothermia and all of those stuff.
We talk a lot about hypothermia.
Yeah, all the warning signs. And it turns out that the man swimming makes it to shore, just over an hour?
I said just over an hour.
Yeah. And they interview him as he's coming out of the water and his jaw is locking up because his body is like on the verge of...
He's so cold.
He's so cold. Yeah, his body is on the verge of like full-blown hypothermia. That he believes after doing this, that this is very well feasible that you could swim to this. Okay, great.
From a guy who
the guys in the raft look, they've been having a mess of a time since the beginning. The raft they're like laying in the water. It's like anyone who's had this experience, it's like you're in a pool where your little floaty toy is slowly leaking. And by the time you're like,
yeah.
Right. Or you're sleeping on an air mattress and the air is falling. Like it just seems it's deflating as they're going along. They're floundering. They're wet and cold. They never sat in the raft. They used it almost like a flotation device to put under their arms. And they're like kicking.
Across it.
Yeah, they were laying across it.
And they had the handmade paddles.
They didn't get very far.
Well, they said in 2 hours, these guys have made it a quarter mile.
That's it.
Due to the currents and all of that in the bay.
Yeah.
Made it a quarter
Yeah,
mile.
they called it. Like they get picked up by a boat. They decide after 2 hours, they're done. They're not doing this anymore. So there's that. Really at the end of the day, that's kind of where, and then we hear the female reporter's opinion about what she thinks
we get a lot of opinions.
And
no facts.
Then that's just Benjamin David's bumping the mics everywhere.
I didn't bump the mic.
That's it. Like,
I don't know.
You guys, that's where it is.
This episode was so bad.
It was so weird. So, okay. And I did some post, obviously this aired, 30 something years ago. There has been some sort of, every several years, this kind of story comes up and people, there's DNA testing and different things like that are available now. And people have speculated about that they're family members or this, that, and the other and tried to get DNA testing done. Right. What are your thoughts on this?
So this is our update.
Yeah, this is and I would say the biggest update that I could find was a letter that was sent to the FBI. Did you read that letter?
No.
Okay, so there was a letter sent to the FBI claiming to be one of the men who escaped, that he would come forward if they would promise him medical care. He was dying of cancer.
Oh, I actually did read
Okay.
this.
The FBI never gave us any more information other than that. I think they tried to do some testing on the letter. I also read that there are family members of the brothers who have come out because he had sisters. The boys had sisters. They weren't the only two.
This is the article I read. This was from this year.
This was from this year.
Yeah.
That they came out and said that they fully, or I guess it's grandkids of these women or kids of these women, that their uncles were alive and well, that they had made it to South America, they'd gone on to remarry, and that they had stayed as much in contact as they could without the risk of getting caught with their families, but that they had escaped.
Yeah, so I read that article. It's from the nephew of the boys.
Yes.
And he claims that his family was in contact with the Anglin brothers throughout their whole life, that they died in the early 90s.
Yep.
Supposedly there is one picture of these two men standing next to an anthill in Brazil.
Yeah.
Like a big whatever. Supposedly. Here's the thing. He says it, but we actually have zero evidence.
We don't have evidence, but there was talk, I think in that same article, that they were looking at trying to get some DNA testing of people that still lived in there, that they'd be able to tell if this was a paternal father or grandfather of. Yeah.
No, I was saying this one picture, supposedly they ran it through facial recognition, and it came up as a match as one of them and a possible as the other brother. I saw the picture. It's super grainy and blurry. I'm not quite sure how you were able to get
facial recognition off
facial
of it.
recognition. Anyways, but I know what I'm also saying is he says that happened. We actually have no evidence that happened.
I guess the only evidence would be he's not trying to gain anything from it. He's not even how many times has someone come out and said, my dad or my grandfather was a Zodiac killer, and they start a podcast and they want a book deal and they want all of these things. This guy just seemed to be like, yeah, this was a well-known family secret.
Yeah, but I've also heard this too of D.B. Cooper.
Yeah.
We talked about this. Do you know how many people have come forth and said that their grandfather or their dad
was D.B. Cooper?
Died in his confession, he claimed to be D.B. Cooper. It just happened a few months ago.
Yeah, it happened this year. Yes.
Yeah. And someone, I think a year or two ago, a friend of mine sent me a YouTube video of a family. It was an hour long. Same thing of a family member supposedly several years ago he claimed to be D.B. Cooper.
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, the Zodiac killer, you got people that say, oh, my grandfather confessed on his deathbed, or my dad did, or whatever.
There's no benefit. I think the benefit is maybe notoriety.
Yeah.
It is the same thing. We've run into this now multiple times.
So what do you think happened? I guess having looked at all of the information that's out there, even of this up to this year, what do you think the likelihood is that they died in the bay or that they escaped?
Oh, I think they're dead.
You think they died trying to leave?
Well, and there is multiple good arguments of why they died. And they bring this up in the episode. The FBI agent says, the outgoing current that heads into the Pacific Ocean started at 10 that night. He says the earliest they could have gotten into the water was 10:30. And they would have had to try to fight against that current. And then if they did die, it would have carried them out into the ocean.
Okay, yeah.
So hence why their bodies didn't wash up in the bay.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. It's a theory.
Yeah, it's a theory. Yeah.
Also, again, another good possibility, another argument made is when they made it to land, they would have had to do something. There were to get to wherever they're going. There was no thefts, no car break-ins, nothing reported that night or the next several days.
Yeah.
These guys
I
are
actually
on their
think that's the biggest argument as to why they didn't, was that
I think that is a good
they would have
argument.
needed money or transportation of some sort. So I actually fall into the camp. I think they escaped.
Okay.
But I think that the only way that happened was that they likely had made a contact with that other former inmate who had,
Bumpy Johnson?
that would have been able to get out to them, so they wouldn't have had to get that far out into the bay, and would have provided them with a way to get to South America, or at least the means to get them across the border. That is the only way I believe that this could have actually happened, where they stayed alive. Yeah, so and again, there's not a lot of evidence behind that other than the fact that we have some people coming forward now today saying that they had this picture. That's the only thing that kind of, and the phone call that heeds to it, and then the FBI letter that showed up, that is there evidence that they got out of Alcatraz. And if they did, I think that unless they had outside help like that, then they couldn't have gotten out of the harbor on their own. With how planned it was for 9 months, I don't think that it's an insane theory or thought to think that there was some outside help. I don't know. That's just my...
This is my thing on that. Okay. It's dark. These guys, and I don't like using their reenactment as a super great
basis of study.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for there. But I do think that there are some things you can take away from it. You have 3 guys on this tiny little raft trying to go where you want to go, proved to be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Fighting these currents. The chances of a guy in a boat finding them, he'd literally have to run them over to find them.
Yeah.
In the dark.
Fair. And I mean, I agree. Being out in the water at night, you cannot see 10 feet in front of you.
And this is my example. When we are doing a search at work, we call a helicopter in. I've worked with helicopters a lot.
Yeah.
Where they're flying down and helping us do a search.
Yeah.
It's the daytime, and they're 100 feet above me. They can never find us.
Yeah.
Well, they do, but we always have to take a flashlight and give them a light. Say, this is where I am. This is the area I need
the guy
you
on the
to
boat
search.
could have had a flashlight. That was not
But
something.
they had no way to signal this guy.
They had no way to signal this guy, but he could have had a way to signal where he was.
I'm just, the reason I'm bringing that up is the chance. It is more difficult to find someone in a vast open area
100%.
than what people think.
Yeah.
Add in the darkness. These guys have no light on them. He could have been 100 feet away, and they still wouldn't even know it.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't even know it. You would literally, and again, even if they had a very specific place, meet us here, they probably had a hard time even steering that boat to where they wanted to go. Plus, it's dark. How could you even see where you're wanting to go besides the light of the bay?
Yeah.
And a general area of where you're going.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I have no idea. Possible? Sure.
Yeah.
Probable? Probably not. I don't.
Yeah, fair. Like I said, I think that there is at least enough unsolved answers in this that there is a chance that these men did escape, get down to South America or Brazil, and live out their days.
Possible.
Yeah. I mean, But, and here's the thing. Prison breaks still to this day are, I mean, there's entire TV shows, like true crime shows based on are telling stories of prison breaks. People are still to this day desperate. They decide, ah, I don't like it here, and try to
Shocking.
leave, right?
Yeah.
And many are very unsuccessful. We've covered a few here, and a few of them have gotten a couple of years out of it. I guess we had the one guy, he was never detained before he escaped, the gangster or the mobster guy that ended up in San Diego running a convenience store. He hadn't been jailed before he just got out of town before he got
Oh
apprehended.
yeah.
So
I don't know, but it's
yeah, I don't. Here we go. Like that is the episode recap. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Alcatraz. I know that there is a whole there is shows based on this about it being haunted out there. There's historical references out there. It housed some crazy inmates. There are things that I still think to this day that we have learned from the prison system there that were successful, that have moved forward, and probably things that we learned that were not successful. I think there is something to be said about housing the most high risk people all in one spot. But the thought of having a prison on an island in the middle of cold, frigid waters, it's an interesting concept as far as, is that a way to keep prisoners more likely to stay inside the prison than to try to escape?
all we know is that the only person to successfully escape, and then the government go and catch him and put him in this secret place, was Sean Connery. That's it. That's all we know.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's a movie called The Rock. It's got Sean Connery
Oh,
and Nicolas
does it?
Cage.
I don't. I got nothing for you on those ones.
Golly. It's a great movie.
I'm sure it is.
And it all takes place on Alcatraz.
There we go. Like I said, other than being intrigued by it when I went to San Francisco, I've been by it in a ferry a few times. If I was in San Francisco again in the future, it would be a fun thing to go out to the island. Museums hold my attention span though for about 2 hours max, and then I want to be done with it. Even when we went to Ellis Island, it was really cool, but
I spent all day there.
was like annoyed that there wasn't like a restaurant there where I could just go sit and like have a Diet Coke and a sandwich. And you could have spent all day there.
I could have spent all day.
And after about 2 hours, I was like, get me off this island. So
you wanted to escape.
Yeah, I'd be one of those people that wanted to escape. So.
All right. Anyways.
Okay. Well, guys, that's our episode. We are so thankful for you guys joining us. And again, please rate and review, follow us along, find us on socials. If you guys have any questions or feedback, please feel free to email us at unsolvedcouplepod@gmail.com. And we hope you guys all have an amazing New Year's and that 2025 is the best year yet. Okay, Ben, here's your question. Do you have any New Year's resolutions for 2025?
Oof. I don't yet, because
we're a couple weeks out as the time of recording.
At this recording, we're a couple weeks out.
Are you a big New Year's resolution fan? Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't say that. I am a big person in evaluating one's self and making goals, but I don't do it just at the beginning of the year. I try to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Because, whatever. Like,
yeah.
We all see the flaws in ourselves, and I see a crap ton of my flaws. And I'm always trying to work on, but I'm usually working on the same flaw for 10 years or whatever, because I'm not very good at changing or doing whatever I want to do or that.
Yeah.
Like right now, my newest New Year's resolution, I guess my newest thing I'm trying
self-improvement
is to shut my mouth in certain situations. To be quieter.
To be a better listener.
To be quieter.
And that the words
listen.
you speak are important, and opening your mouth when it's
Yes.
important versus
To
just for the fun of
truly-
it.
We all hear the term of think before you talk. I'm really trying to put that in action, especially at my job
Yeah.
and other places too. But
Okay.
it's kind of a generalized one,
Yeah.
but it is one that I've really tried to follow. But
Yeah.
I've been working on that one for a long time, and I do good for a couple of weeks.
And then something, sets you off,
Not
and then
always,
you got to
but-
reset.
So no, anyways, back to your original. I'm not the biggest New Year's. I haven't come up with anything. I might.
Yeah.
I have no problem making goals and that. I enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, you like making goals and trying to.
I do write them down.
Yeah, you are big about this since the time of our beginning of our marriage. If there's something that you feel like you're struggling or you want to work on, you write it down and you research it and you do work hard on implementing it. But that is something that is always ongoing for you.
Yeah, I write all that stuff down. I even then go back and I write how I'm doing, how I'm failing. I have logs of this stuff.
Yeah.
But people don't care. And it's a weird niche of mine, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, what about you?
Um,
What's your New Year's resolution?
First off, I'm the same way. I'm not a big New Year's resolution fan because I don't know if sometimes, and personally, it doesn't feel genuine to me to just be like doing it because it's the first of the year. But I do enjoy the time to reflect
Yeah.
on how our year was, what I can do better moving forward, how I'd like to improve, and what maybe some of the things I'd like to see in my life going forward. The last several years, a big thing that has kind of been, and I think it's just because we transitioned into homeschooling kind of post-COVID. I started going back to school, and then we started homeschooling, and so I put that on the back burner. But an ongoing thing of resolution of mine for a while now has been gaining new skills and knowledge. And that's, to me, is fairly simple in the fact that it could be reading a book outside of the normal genre that I read, or the big one over the last couple of years has been specifically focusing on ways to be creative and improving my skills on that. And teaching homeschool has really allowed that opportunity to happen. Last year, I worked for a long time on learning how to watercolor. Now, I'm no master at it, but I do feel a little bit more confident in that and understanding it. The kids and I, a few weeks ago, our son is a very talented drawer.
He's very
Very
talented.
good at it. And that's something I would like to be able to improve upon. One, because I think for just the mental health clarity of being able to sit down and work on a skill or read a new book, or like shutting down your mind where it's not consuming content and entertainment.
Yeah.
And so,
We're using your mind.
yes, you're using your mind in a different way. And so a few weeks ago, I talked to him about drawing botany because I enjoy botany drawings. I think they're beautiful. And we studied Lewis and Clark last year, so we're doing our recap of it this year. And that was one of the things that Lewis and Clark did was document plants and stuff like that. And so just things like that. Like last week, we found a YouTube tutorial on drawing botany, and we all did it together. Me and the kids did. And then I've worked on it for several more nights, and it's something over the next however long couple months or weeks I would like to. I don't want to be some fantastic, amazing, skilled artist, but I like just having a little bit of wheelhouse or something to do if I'm needing a break. And so over the last couple of years, that's probably been my biggest resolution, is something I've always been interested and intrigued in. Now with YouTube and all of these other things, there's so many free ways to learn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And to grow your mind in that way. And I've always, being creative is one of my favorite things. And to be able to take the time to build upon those skill sets has been. So, I mean, that's about it. But yeah, it's not your typical normal standard lose weight, house cleaning, all of the other kind of sort of normal ones that you see. And I think, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on New Year's resolutions. But I don't know. Maybe some people do them and they're really successful at them. I feel like in my early 20s, I tried really hard to be like, oh, I'm going to get healthy this year, or I'm going to work out more, or I'm going to learn how to run a 5K. I never finished through with it because guess what? I don't like running, or I don't like this, or I don't like it. I always was trying to push myself to do something I innately didn't already like.
Yeah, and this is not a self-help
Podcast.
But several years ago too, I started when I would make a goal. I would put a number to it. I want to do this many times.
Okay.
Because then when you did it, you could say, I accomplished that. Right?
Yeah.
Obviously. I think that's pretty basic. I think we all know that by now.
Yeah.
I ain't changing the wheelhouse with this knowledge. This is my low IQ coming out.
Well, and I think my big problem too, and this is one of our pet peeves that we both share, is this time of year and into, through January, parts of February, is all the word salad and the useless sayings and slogans on how to improve your life, but not actually implementing a single thing in any.
You're triggering me. You know how you know how I feel about this stuff. Yeah. I could go on for hours on this.
Yeah, and I feel like it's pushed really heavily this time of year that people, they use these trigger words and this word salad to get people really motivated, but not ever give them a single ounce of direction, which is only setting people up to fail. Yeah. Because me telling you to find your why and be the best you.
Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself. Okay.
It's a bunch of garbage.
Yeah. Without a single ounce of direction. And I feel like this time of year, there's a lot of self-help, a lot of health and fitness, a lot of this stuff that kind of manipulates and takes advantage of the situation of people feeling the pressure to do something. So I'm here to tell you, you don't have to set a goal. You can set one if you want to. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but just be you and be cool with that.
You just said it. Just be you.
But I'm not even going to tell you to be the best version of yourself. Yeah, I don't know. That's just getting into like the weeds of this sort of stuff. But anyways, that was my question. If you had any goals, and
no, like I said, it's something I'm always looking into. I have a book that I write my thoughts and my stuff, and I would say sometimes I get to it every couple of weeks, sometimes every couple of months. But I sit down and I just start writing. And next thing I know, sometimes I'm 2-3 pages in, and it's usually about all the stupid stuff I'm doing wrong and I'm not doing good at.
And you feel like if you put it down, you're gonna.
I feel if I put it down,
recognize
I can actually
it.
focus on it.
Yeah.
Better. Anyways, that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, we hope that you have an amazing week, and we will see you next year as Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime. Bye.